Today's video is part 2 to how I'm making the chest pieces out of metal, and I'm going to show you how I make the round pieces like the pawn, the castle or the rook, and the bishop. Now they all follow the same sort of principle where you start off with a bar and then you put it on the lathe and you turn it to different shapes. So I'll explain a little bit more about how I do that now. The main principle is that I need something, a bar or something like that, and I put it on the lathe and I turn it so that I get these shapes out of it. Now, I don't really want to take a full piece of metal and then carve out a tiny piece in the middle, because that's a waste of metal. So what I've been doing is using some round threaded bar. So I start off with the round threaded bar, and on the bottom I weld a nut, and that allows me to carve out the shape. Okay, so by using this method I minimise the amount of waste material that I've got, and I'll show you in a bit more detail on the desk. So here's the threaded bar that I'm using for the pawns, and it's just an offcut, so it's not costing me anything. First thing I need to do is to put a nut on the end, and basically I don't tighten the nut all the way in, and I'll just weld that all the way through there. I'll shave that off round this, and that allows me to begin to shape it. So how did I arrive at this particular size? Well, it's determined by the size of the nut that I'm going to use. So the round end can be carved out of this size of nut, and that round end then determines the height of it. So I've already measured this so it's equal both sides. The way that I did that is I took the drawing that I've been using as my guide. I measure the width of the piece, and the width of it then is transposed, and that will give me the height. So that is 1.5 widths, which will be the height. So now I know the diameter of the base because that's the size of the nut I'm using, and now I know that it's 1.5 sizes of the base, and that's how I arrive at a piece that size. And then from there I can use the height of the pawn to determine how big every other piece is going to be. So it's all in relation to the pawn. So what I'm going to do is weld this to here, then show you how I carve it on the lathe. Right, I need to let that cool down naturally, because if I put it into water I'll temper it and that'll be more difficult to cut. First thing we're going to do is round off all the edges, make this a complete circle, and then I'm going to flatten the bottom surface there. Okay, so that's the end nice and flat and the outside is round. So the next thing to do is to start contouring these shoulders here. So I need to adjust this to just the right angle, and then I'll feed it in until I get to the thread. Okay. And so next thing I'm going to do is cut all the thread off and then mark it for the final cut. Okay, so that's how tall the pawn's going to be in total. Now I'm just going to go a little bit further to give me room to work. So now I'm going to mark the key measurements onto the blank here. Here's the key measurements put onto the blank. So this black line here, center of it, is this ridge. This red line here is the middle of the ball. And that red line there is the top of the piece. So all I'm going to do now is shave this away to reveal the ridge either side. Then I'll start shaving away this part here to create a ball, and then finally I'll shave it away the shoulders here until I get to the base. So as you can see, it's taking shape nicely now. So I've got all the key measurements in place there. I just offer it up. So I've got this shoulder here. That is the correct diameter there. I've got to measure this, measure the ball, and then just keep shaving that away until it meets the shoulder. So I won't bore you with more milling. What I'll do is I'll show you the finished piece. So here's the final piece. That's one of the originals. That's where I took the measurements from. And I take the measurements, all the measurements from this one piece, so that any minor inaccuracies won't get amplified by the next piece I make. So I've cut it off at the end there from the threaded bar. The red line indicates the height of that one, so all I've got to do now is file that down. Probably use a grinder first until I get close, and then I'll use a file, and that's the piece finished. So as you can see, it's just a matter of taking accurate measurements, marking them, slowly cutting away at the material, continue measuring all the time, and all the other pieces here are made by the same process, and you just cut in different ways to get the different shapes. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun making these pieces, and as I make them I'm getting slightly better, and I'm learning new techniques, and I'm also learning more about my lathe, so it's all good for me. So that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching.